Guys, welcome back to the Right Hook Podcast. I'm actually leading up today with yours truly, Ray Johnston, and we have the one, the only real dose of D. D, how you doing?
Good, man. I'm excited about this one, and you got to do the over today, which is pretty cool too.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
So I actually had the privilege of prepping this podcast. I want to do something very different. So D, what we're going to do is I compiled the most frequently asked questions from people that we talk to, a community that we're building, as well as from our brands. And I want to do a popcorn style. Let's go through those because a lot of them are, number one, ones that are asked by millions of people. But number two, some of them are very easily solvable. So I feel like we could really riff off going back and forth on these.
Yeah, man, millions of people. Let's go.
Well, funny you say that because so people don't know this, but we were all together, the leadership team of Right Hook in Nashville last week. And it kind of blew my mind that once I realized that there's 8 million e-commerce brands in the world. Isn't that crazy?
That's actually like super and growing. And growing. Like Shopify isn't going to stop anytime soon, and they're pushing the whole like commerce thing really hard. It's just getting easier and easier for people to start brands. Yeah, man, that's a lot of people.
The thing that also surprised me was that while we look at Shopify as the best in class, and I think it is best in class, but 20 something of those 8 million brands are actually on Shopify. That's what blew my mind the most, actually.
20 something percent, you mean?
Yeah, we're actually on Shopify. And that's growing too. Like I think Harley on LinkedIn this past week actually did an interview like some of the biggest brands are moving over to Shopify. So I think that's a tailwind that's going to increase, but that was surprising.
Yeah, totally. A lot more room for them to grow.
What should I do with underperforming ads?
First, diagnose why the heck it's underperforming. I think you have to really look at it from a full funnel standpoint. Okay, underperforming ads. I like to work backwards, right? Look at it from a conversion rate standpoint on site, so post click, and then come back to click, and then start looking at metrics that way. And the difficult thing also is underperforming ads, looking at it from a system standpoint. Travis actually talked about this on that episode. I think you guys should go watch the Yummy Noob one, where if you just look at each campaign or each ad set in isolation from all the other ones and start killing it that way, you might start getting subpar results because you're thinking that you're killing one, and you might notice that the other might actually start getting dragged down as well. But I always start with post click. In other words, what is the website conversion rate first and foremost, and then go from there and go well from a purely quantitative diagnostic standpoint. We're not even going to creative or product or anything like that first and foremost, just so that you can have a dashboard in there. Look at your website conversion rate. What is that? If it's like a 0.25% conversion rate, that might be your issue. Then you go back, don't just start there. Go back and look at how are outbound clicks doing? What is my cost per acquisition looking like? Go back further than that and start looking at your click-through rate, and then also look at your CPMs too. Those kinds of numbers really do start like forming what underperforming looks like. And then you can start looking at creative angles, like all that other stuff too, right? I'm really keen to know what you think.
If this CEO thing doesn't work out, I think you'd be a great media buyer. That was actually pretty well put, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like shoot, how else?
Looking for a media buyer. He's got an expensive price tag, but
if you wanted me to send you a resume, enter into the comments your email. I'll shoot it over.
That's fine. Yeah, really well put. I was going to say something similar, that for underperforming ads, you want to triangulate, is it an ad problem, a creative problem? And so you want to kind of triangulate. Dee mentioned really great tactics already. A couple things that I would add on to that is, and take into account with the entire ad set or campaign, is the ad set and campaign underperforming? Because if you watch one of our previous episodes with Luke, everything is a system. Meaning that you may have an ad that looks like it's underperforming, but is it feeding the system? For example, we had a brand that taught us this lesson years ago. They were running a video ad, and the reported ROAS of that video ad was a 0.10 ROAS, but it was getting all the budget. We turned off the ad, their sales dropped 30%. We got a phone call the next day from the founder saying, what the heck did you guys do? My sales just dove 30%. We're like, all we did was turn off a crappy ad that wasn't performing. We turned it back on, sales went back up. It taught us the lesson that whatever is reported ROAS may be one thing, but how is it playing into the entire ecosystem of the system? So D, your style was eloquent, very well put. That's the only thing I'd add to it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna throw it back to you. This one is probably one that we can feed onto diagnosing. So once we diagnose a problem for ads that aren't working, what is the, and Luke and you, I think, covered a lot of it already, but let's get tactical. What's the best approach for scaling ad budgets?
Ooh, great question.
On Meta, by the way, like specifically.
Yeah, Google's a different beast.
Yeah.
On Meta, you kind of have what I would call vertical scaling or horizontal scaling. So really quickly, vertical scaling is you are increasing the budget in the same campaign or ad set. Horizontal scaling in the ad account is where you are duplicating the campaign to try to get the same campaign, but duplicating across. Like you have one campaign at 500 a day. A way of scaling is to duplicate it 4 or 5 times, right? Now that you have 2K a day spent. So that's both ways. Our preferred way, what we do first is we start by increasing the budget 20% every 1 to 2 days, while also looking at on Shopify metrics of new customer revenue, AMER, to see does that follow suit. If it follows suit, it shows we have a strong correlation and we'll keep on that path. So that's typically our method. And you can increase a budget over the course of 1 to 2 weeks scaling by 200-300% very quickly. So that's our method typically.
What are the signs to look out for as that 20% keeps going? What are the signs to look out for to go, let's start, it ain't working, right? We can't just keep doing that. Where are the diminishing returns, or what do we look out for there?
Oh man, that's a phenomenal question. Can I actually show an example? I think this would really help to paint that question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I want to share you guys how we think, and that's going to answer your question, D. This is something we use internally. This is super top secret. You can get some of this stuff elsewhere, but we use an internal tracking log. And I believe the power of this is that every single day, we're tracking every spend, and we're tracking how does it correlate to important metrics. Now, I'm not going to get through every column, but every day we're tracking spend on every platform to see, and this is where we look for, and these are warning signs. So every day we're tracking new customer revenue, returning customer revenue. Like we believe advertising's job is to drive net new customers. So when we're increasing spend, we want to see, do we see a correlation? Like, does it happen immediately, or is it maybe lagging? Like we do look at that. But if we don't see it following suit, then that ad's not going to scale. So then we have to go back, and that's an ad problem or a creative problem. But if it does, and we see new customer revenue increasing, depending on the amount, it gives us the confidence, okay, this ad can keep scaling. Depending on the cost, that's a different conversation. The other thing we look at is this column right here, which means cost to acquire a new customer, what we call NCPA. So what we want to look for is, as we're scaling, are we staying within that benchmark we need to be based off of the brand's targets, what they want from their business, for example. And then we look at AMER, which is frankly just like contribution margin. It's what is the overall gross revenue of new customers divided by gross advertising spend? Because every brand we work with in NeoSD, we determine what is that KPI based off of like their profit targets that they want. And so this right here fundamentally is what we look at when we're scaling to make sure all those staying within line, and are they increasing or decreasing based off that spend increase.
Nice. Yeah, so glad that you share that. And by the way, for everyone watching, checkmate. Now you understand why for episode 9, when we're talking with, we had Luke on the pod, that's why he almost started, like we couldn't help ourselves, but almost every other sentence we go, you got to know your numbers. You got to know your numbers.
It's everything.
Because we got to know
like
where the threshold is.
Because you know this, because we're so anal about it, is we want to make sure that we're even tracking daily profit. Now, I know there's platforms out there, but there's something special about every day, everyone on the team is looking at every single new row to see how is the correlation between increasing spend and daily freaking profit. Like this is the foundation. That's why we get so anal about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is also, to go back to our episode around what makes a good growth strategist, that also is the delineation between, if you say for example have a dedicated media buyer versus and also a dedicated high level strategist, right? The dedicated media buyer would be the one kind of neck deep in the sheet looking at that number and going, well, my job is to then, as much as possible, hit the true north on that profit column, right? Looking at all the other metrics. And then the strategist's role is to take that information and go, well, at a broader scheme of things, how does everything kind of play out? Because how does this impact my conversation with the retention team around their strategy? How does this impact all these other different components? What about the search team? What about organic? What about the campaign that's coming up? What about a recent product drop? To be able to think laterally that way.
Man, dude, that's the thing that it really burns me, is when people just make a decision in isolation without having the full picture. Like today's performance marketing, you cannot just look at an ad account and make your decisions there. You have to take the entire macro. It's like you have 1 foot in the ad account, 1 foot looking at the macro. How is it impacting the entire business? For example, you mentioned retention team. Is sometimes your problem may not be an ad problem. If you have low profit, it may not be an ad problem. For example, I can't tell you many brands that we've had where increasing spend, AMER, and the cost to acquire a new customer was holding static. Everything on the ad side was perfect, but they just look at the revenue per day. Come to find out, returning customer revenue is going down. Well, then that's a returning customer problem, not an ad problem. So without knowing these differences, you may be making the wrong decision.
Or at least a more expensive one.
Yeah. Or as Luke liked to say, is like scaling yourself into oblivion. Like you got to know like what's the problem and fix that.
Totally. Absolutely.
So that was a really fun one. So the next one is actually a bit more tactile. We have a brand right now that asks this question. So I thought there's other people that have the same question. Every time you start a new Facebook ad account, you're limited to $50 a day in ad spend. So the question is, how the heck do I increase the $50 ad spend limit, and how fast can I increase it?
I'm going to let you take that one straight up.
Okay. It's actually a two-part answer, excuse me. The first one is, the only way to increase it is, one, you can go the long way, and it's by earning trust. Facebook will increase it as you earn good favorability with paying their invoices, frankly. And the moment a credit card bounces and it doesn't pay for it, you start from the beginning. So don't do that. So that's the hard way. Yeah. And that could take months. The other way, and this is a secret way, create a support ticket with a chat support. Take that support ticket, and we have a rep, and then we forward that to our rep. They escalate that to their secret in-house policy team, because we are a high-level agency, and it gets cleared right away. So that's the proper way to do it if you have a rep, which is the good part working with an agency. But if you don't, the hard way is going to have to be earning your way there, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. And I love how that was a plug for like the fact that we're a meta partner.
There are benefits.
Yeah, there are benefits. That is a very real thing, guys. As much as possible, do start that ticket. We learned ourselves that even with interfacing with our reps, if there's no ticket that goes to them, we then have to go create one ourselves, this and the other. So we like helping other people that help us. So internally, we just started like a support ticket and then shoot that over to the rep. Very relevant, especially now as we're going into high spend season and not wanting to hit ad account spend limits. We get our founders to do the same on their credit card side, just to make sure that that thing doesn't get blocked as well. But in terms of that $50, that starting budget, try to get a rep as much as possible. Or don't forget, there's also LinkedIn, where you can connect with some of Facebook employees over there too, if you just don't have or don't want to engage with an agency. Or you can just DM like someone at an agency and be like, hey, is this something you could help me out with? Like, I've got a brand, this perspective. And they might go, hey, you know what? This is someone that I want to earn their business later when they're spending more. And they might just like kind of throw you a bone. A few little ways to get there. Or you can just grind it out.
Smart. Yeah, that's actually really smart. Like, can you become friends with someone that can help you out? That's a really good idea.
Dude, when I had my tech startup before Right Hook, that's how I managed to weasel my way into pitching Guy Kawasaki. Like I got to sit in front of Guy Kawasaki, one of the earliest employees and like chief evangelist of Apple, and pitch in my startup because I just weaseled my way through like different types of connections. And yeah, like I did that for being able to pitch a whole bunch of really big names.
That's really good. I love the hustle that you have. I think that's a really good strategy. A lot of times you can hustle your way to find a solution. Okay, so I have another question for you. Okay, so this is one that I think a lot of people are feeling, especially the last 2 months when performance was down, frankly, is how do you make good video ads that scale?
How do you make good video ads that scale? First and foremost, do not go high production. Because there's a reason why. It's not just because of personal preference. Do not go high production because you're dropping a lot of money into one concept, right? So you don't get a really quick feedback loop, right? And also most production teams, and I'm talking about traditional production teams, tend to think in narrative or think in montage, not think in hooks and angles and the problem solution awareness spectrum, right? So in other words, try to go for volume and think in hooks, angles, but the narrative is the narrative towards the close, number one. And then number two, what I mean by thinking in hooks is that you should always be thinking about how the first 3 seconds, or at least a great starting point is how the first 3 seconds, you can show people something that pulls them into the rest of the video. And then you want to think about a way to have a cliffhanger every 5 to 7 seconds after that, so that people kind of stick along and it's doing the selling for you in that way. Once you find the one that pings, and the one that pings is not the one that you personally like, the one that pings is the one that prints you money. Then you iterate on that one and that becomes the winner, and you try to create ones to beat that winner. And then you go again and you go again and you go again. That's my take on it.
So how you make a video ad that scales, what my approach would be is actually comes from an episode we did with Yami Noob. I think that was like episode 7 or 8 actually, and have zero pre-definitions or assumptions of what a video ad scaling is. Like go in with curiosity. I feel like that's the big underlying theme is like, just be curious. And my goal is to scale. It's not to make something pretty per se. Sometimes our aren't always the same. Now, tactically, how I would approach it and how we approach it is whatever the product is, what is the mass desire of that product? Every product has more than one mass desire. An energy drink, a mass desire is energy. It could be the health of it. It could be the longevity of your body or of your mind. There's many mass desires. So find which of those is the biggest one or the most painful for people. So we typically start there, okay? Then we craft the ad around that mass desire, and we create a concept of how can we then display that solution to that problem in that ad. Now, you break that down to components. You have the hook, then you have the presentation of the product, then you have demonstration of how it helps it or explanation of how it helps it, and then a call to action. So, and as quick as possible, that's how I would go about approaching it. But underlying all of it is, can you just remain very curious to allow yourself to do something you wouldn't normally be okay with, following that structure I mentioned, and you'll be shockingly surprised how well that works.
Follow up from that too, in terms of scale, using the messaging and the ad or the creative to tap into a new market. I think case in point, the example that you showed of that one supplement brand, most supplement brands go after like, gym bros, gym rats, meatheads, etc. And then this one goes, RIP your dad bod. Now, right? So then it's like, okay, well, is there a market to tap into there? Right? The non-gym goers, that's why they have the dad bod in the first place. But they still want to be able to, they still want to take the supplements and feel like they're training and all that. So I think that's a key piece, to use creative to scale into new markets.
Great. So actually, if you're okay with it, I want to show an ad that our team showed us this week that is scaling. The ad is simple, but there's a really great strategy that I freaking love in video ads, and I think it's worth watching. So this is actually made by David and his team on our team, amazing strategist for a cosmetic brand. So let me pull up this ad real quick. and we're going to watch it, and then we can kind of dissect why this ad is working so well.
You feel like you've gone in with too much. Look at it already. Oh my God. Instantly lifted, instantly brightened. Like, it literally works so easily. See how I've got darkness under my eyes? This can make a massive difference to your makeup, and a lot of people have trouble using color correctors and brightening concealers because they settle, they crease, they feather, can kind of even age you further. So this powder will actually completely color correct that darkness. It will brighten, it will lift the face, and it is so easy.
So I'm going to pause right here. D, what are a couple elements that you noticed already? Because one thing we learned from our team is that this has a 40% hold rate, which is 40% of the people who watch this video keep watching.
Yeah, for sure. Jump straight to the action, and then go, and then go set the context. By the way, just by the by, a lot of movies actually do this. If you watch most of the recent James Bond movies, and I think they might do it in John Wick as well. What do I mean? The movie doesn't start with like in a world and then some slow action. They throw you straight, like, and James Bond is straight in a car chase already, right? Rolling down the streets, trying to dodge cars, like motorcycles, or like people on motorcycles are shooting at James Bond. He kind of spins around and all that. They start with the action, get your adrenaline kind of pumped up a little bit, and then they weave you into the story so they don't lose you. Same kind of concept, just on social. They're pumping you up.
Thing I'd add is, if you ever watched a Mr. Beast video, let's say he's going to smash a Ferrari. The video opens with, I'm going to smash a Ferrari. And this Ferrari falls right before you see the action. He starts the video. Okay, guys, today we're going to smash a Ferrari. So like, it starts with the climax without giving away everything. And then you have to watch to get that fulfillment of the climax. Wait, that sounds awfully familiar to something. You know what? Yeah, so that's the strategy I absolutely love, is start with the climax and then have them, to get the fulfillment of it, they actually have to watch the video. And the second thing is, she followed the same format, if you guys didn't watch it, is once the video started over after that climax, the problem. Don't you guys have this problem with your eyes, right? Then presentation of the product, the solution. And it followed a very simple format, very fundamental in how it was structured, but just adding those different pieces together just has an amazingly good creative that's scaling.
Totally.
All right. So the next question I want to ask you is, how many ads should you be making and testing?
17.
That's a very specific answer.
Right, because it's the only reason why I answered how many ads should I be making and testing, is the only reason why I answered 17 is because I see that earnest look on so many people's faces, like they're seeking this really specific answer. And so usually I'll just pull out a really specific number and they'll look at me like, really 17? Because there are so many things to consider, right? You have to consider your budget. You have to consider the metrics based off of what's running already. And then also at the same time, you also have to consider what your product is in terms of buying cycle, consideration cycle as well. If it's like so it kind of correlates. I think consideration phase or consideration timeline and average the price of your product, there is correlation there. If it's $10,000, people are going to think about it a bit more and are going to need a lot more information, I would imagine, compared to something that is like $25, right? But at $25, if your margins are kind of funky, then you got to take that into consideration too. So a lot of variables to think about. How do you think about, do you have a simpler way to explain, to provide that answer? Because for my brain just goes like, a lot to think about. Let's sit you down and spend 30 minutes with you.
Yeah, I mean, the best answer is just to give him a random number like what you did. Because it depends. And it's not always the same for every brand. How we think about it, and I think Luke might have covered this in one of the previous episodes, is depends on how fast do you actually want to get learnings back. For example, is if you have a $50 product, you can set the budget to where you're spending $50 a day and decide to kill an ad or scale an ad after 2 days, if that is how you're running the rules in your account. And that means every 2 days, you have something new you're trying to test because you're trying to go through things very quickly. So it really depends on, like you said, the budget and how quickly do you want to get through those learnings. So how we do it is we'll test ads in the initial part 2 to 3 times whatever the target cost to acquire a customer is. Because if it hasn't won by that time, more than likely it's not going to continue to win. That's just our methodology. So we go through a faster learning cycle. Other people, you may not have the budget. That's okay. You can let it run longer. Other people, they want to give Meta more time. That's okay too. That's just our methodology that works well because we want to move a little bit faster. But like Odi said, it depends. The price of your product, if you have a $5,000 product, you may have to have that run for a long time depending on your budget, $1,000, $2,000 before you can determine if that ad is a winner. So take that into a context.
And multi-touch too, right? Like, is it, do you require that multi-touch? And I think this is where going back to that, how to be a great growth strategist or performance marketer or whatever it might be we want to call it, episode, the ability to triangulate and take all those variables and put them into play becomes quite critical to ask all those it depends questions to get to that answer, which by the way is 17 for the record.
That is the magic number.
That is the magic
So if you
number.
think that you were being tricked, that there's some magical pill you can take, the number is 17 for every answer. 17
Right.
ads, 17 campaigns, $17 a day budget. That is the answer.
Yeah, and $17 CPA target. It's the 17,
Cost
17.
cap,
It's the 17.
$17.
It's the 17 method.
We cracked it.
We cracked it. We cracked it on this. You're watching this happening live, guys. There are no mushrooms involved in this call. Oh God, can you imagine? Is it my turn to ask a
We get some
question?
messages. Yeah, go ahead.
So you asked how many ads should you be making in testing. I want to segue into then how often should you start testing new ads?
Ooh. Yeah. So what my answer on this one would be, there's been a big shift in successful advertising is creative diversity. So I think that is an important part that you have to take in consideration how often you should test new ads. Now, our belief is it goes into how we do our creative sprints. So we're on a 2-week sprint cycle of making new creatives. Doesn't mean we only test every 2 weeks. That means we make enough ads to survive every 2 weeks of testing. So how often you should test for us, we're making new creative every 2 weeks, but then we're testing new ads weekly. So for us, that methodology is we test new ads weekly, but then we may test variations intra-week, meaning if we apply budgets are there and we're spending, let's say, $5,000 a day, by Wednesday, we have learnings to where then we can kill the ones that aren't performing, launch new variations inside of those campaigns. So for us, we take the approach of a lot of volume for some accounts and testing. Now, your high average order value, you may test less frequently. So again, the answer, it's 17 is the number. Every 17 days, 17 hours. But for us, weekly is we have new ads we are testing, but we're always thinking about creative diversity because, for example, human nature. I log on to Facebook and Instagram. I see an ad from a company. If I see another ad that just looks like it, I've already seen that to myself. I say that to myself. I'm gonna scroll past. But if you see another ad that doesn't look like what I've seen, now I actually have to decipher in my head. Oh, it's this brand. Now it caught my attention again. So we really think about creative diversity as a really big problem and solution of what we're testing is that every week are we also testing creative that is highly diverse and different.
For sure, absolutely. And I think to disambiguate for anyone that might be lumping creative all into under the one banner or iterations into the one banner, diversity does not have to mean every single piece of creative has a different concept. So you can, because that gets exhausting, it's very unsustainable. You can have one concept and multiple different pieces of creative to deliver against that concept. So if we're doing small little iterations or variations of, we tend to be talking about variations of creative within that same concept or within that same angle. So for example, in the dad bod, the RIP dad bod version, we can then have a bunch of different types of creative to appeal to men with a dad bod that and then position the product accordingly. It's not to say dad bod, mom bod, kid bod, cyborg bod, like, and then those are iterations of. You can do it that way at a higher level, but then you want the volume sitting underneath each concept. Otherwise, it's again reverting back to people that have that high production value type of thinking. It's like one concept and one master video, and it becomes this Hail Mary thing. That's a, you know, $10, $15, $20,000 crew, editor, packaging, color correction, all that. That's that's putting $20,000 worth of eggs into one basket, right?
One thing you mentioned that I think is important to hit on is like there's many things that you can do to test, and sometimes it gets exhausting for people. You can just test the copy. You can test just the thumbnail if it's a video. You can test the text in the image. You can test the hook if it's a video. So it gets exhausting thinking about that. One way to think about it is, can I make one good concept, low production, but can I make one good concept? And then can I come up with a high volume way of variations and iterations to then use it? So for example, we published a document of how you can take one ad into 15 ads that are creatively diverse, for example. You can take that and you can make it look like it's on Twitter, right? With the caption and like a Twitter handle. That's a very easy way. You can take it and make it look like it was taken from Reddit. So it looks very different, but also something that people have seen before. And that's a way that you can be diverse. You take it and turn it into a static. So it's probably not as hard as people realize. My advice would be to test, start with what you can do if your ability is low. Images, thumbnails, GIFs, like start with what you can do, because there's probably even within that realm a way and a path for you to crack and scale with what you can do.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Back when I used to have my production studio, people would ask me all the time, hey, I want to get started into video marketing. What's the best camera I can buy? Right. And I go, the best camera is the one that you have available to you now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't, because it's a great excuse. Oh, I don't have the camera yet. I don't have the lighting yet. I don't have the sound yet. Like, you got a phone yet? You got a phone yet? That's the best one you got right now to start filming. Yeah, for sure. That's
a great way to put it. Like, start with what you do have and find a way to, like, there's people that go viral every single day with a freaking iPhone. Like, it's not the quality in the camera. It's, do you put the elbow grease in to crack it with what you can do?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Back when I was a practicing Catholic as a young boy, my priest used to always say to me, just because you got great goggles doesn't make you a great swimmer. So don't worry about the goggles. It's you. Fix yourself.
I feel like there's a deeper story there.
Yeah, it's when priests are involved, there are always deeper stories. Oh, see? Watch a whole bunch of people just like unsubscribe. I want to take I want to take that whole test new ads question a bit further. So beyond testing ads, how do I get the most out of my ad tests? How do I make my ad tests last longer, run further?
Yeah, it kind of similar to what I said previously is we learned this lesson many times in the previous years. For example, we had a brand. They sold this paint on everything product. It was like a powder you added to paint. And this taught us this lesson years ago, where if you take the one video, it was a UGC video, it was a good concept, right? And if you just run that and it doesn't work, most people are like, this video sucks, I'll move it on to the next one. The problem is you spent the time to curate it from the content creator, they made it. How do you really know you've given it every possible chance to survive? So I think about what's the most amount of chances I can give this video to survive before I write it off, because I put all this time and effort into it. So to make your creatives last as long as possible and give them the most amount of chances, do as many iterations or variations of it as you can. That's why for a video, as a litmus rule, ideally, can you make 10 iterations or variations off that same video? Because if all 10 fail, there's probably a good chance it's not going to work. But what we have seen time and time again, D, it'll be number 2 of 10 that work, or 1 of 10 that work. And if you hadn't gone through that, then you would have just written it off and moved on to the next one.
Yeah. This is dumb anyway. Right? You know,
Meta ads don't work.
yeah. They try it for like 5 minutes and it's like, this is dumb anyway. I'm gonna move on to the next thing. Man, all advertising is just fake.
Yeah.
We get it. Like it can feel really confusing without a proper framework or a proper heuristic to go through testing. But yeah, putting it through its paces and having that rigor, I completely agree with you, is so absolutely critical. Like, for example, that one ad that Luke showed that like spent millions and just stuck around. They tried really hard. They tried using other creators, same script. They tried using other content. It just could not beat that one video that was just printing money. It refused to die. So when you go through certain iterations, you might find ads that instead of like, oh my God, I got to keep refreshing to make the winner happen, the winner just refuses to budge. It just holds on to the championship belt the entire time and just prints you money. So that can happen too.
Speaking of that, we had another brand that we worked with for years, and they had 2 ads that did the same thing. And this ad we actually got from a lady in the comments saying, "I just got this ad, I loved it." We DM'd her saying, "Would you mind just like a video of your experience?" That ad was 5 minutes long, and it 5-minute long testimonial with the phone. It made that brand millions of dollars, and we ran it for years. And I remember through different phases, and this can get tactical, but in different phases when we thought it was dying off, what we would do is we would employ our never die ad strategy, where I know like people are big on like the exclusion bandwagon and let things be wide open. But what we would do is we would just add on video view exclusions to that video and just make it go very broad. And even though the performance will be up and down, it allowed that ad to survive for 2 years, because we were forcing people who never saw that video to more and more people on Meta to see that video. And that ad ran for 2 years, man. I mean, millions of dollars.
Yeah. And while you were talking, a cautionary tale popped into my head where certain marketing teams or founders would find that unicorn type of ad. And what ends up happening is they'll go, oh, well, this has sorted itself out. We got bigger fish to fry. Let's kind of ease up on testing. Or let's ease up on some other, like, you know, let's just ease up on not spend as much time doing the testing because this one's doing all the heavy lifting. You never know when it's going to die.
Never.
Right? That's why the testing always has to happen in the background, because you just never know when it's just going to fall off of a cliff. And how many times have we had that conversation where it's like, oh my God, it's not working anymore. We got to work with an agency. Can we do a discovery call as soon as possible, please? Because the ad that we had running, just like, we don't know what to do anymore. It's like, well, have you been running any tests? No. What do you mean? Why would we test? It was working the whole time. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's like, oh, I don't think you can apply that analogy or that saying to something like paid media.
It's like the people that just want an agency to update their automation flows for email, set and forget, thinking that it's going to continue. No, like you have to continually update them, test them. Rarely is something set and forget in life. It's always a maintenance that goes along with it.
Yeah, for sure. Even our homes, you can't really set.
Trust me.
Try not vacuuming for a week. We get a home with kids.
Thinking that 2 years ago you didn't have termites. It means I'll never get termites. It doesn't happen. Trust me. I have a bill downstairs to prove otherwise.
Oh gosh, that's hilarious. Hey, we're about the top of the hour. Do you have any other question that we want to throw out there?
Yeah. So I have one. I think we can do a really quick popcorn on this one. Okay. So a fashion brand asks this question because they're struggling. How do I scale a fashion brand?
New will always be a rejuvenation of income, right? So and that new, what I mean is, and anyone that's in fashion will probably call me an idiot for like saying something really obvious, but what I mean is every season there's going to be people expect new outfits from your brand. Now that then will fuel all your email campaigns, that will fuel your new ad concepts, that will fuel all that. And then you just keep going from there. The nuance being the non-spray and pray method of new. So you're not newing based off of what your cousin said to you at one, I don't know, like a potluck dinner with the family. You're iterating just like ads. You find the winner, you iterate upon that winner. Product you can approach with the same exact type of way. Something that's already popping, what can you do to feed into that desire rather than just go, we're going to go complete left field and try something super wacky. You can try that, but to try to go super wacky and expect it to scale every single time puts a lot of pressure on a certain stroke of luck. So I would almost disregard all the tactical stuff of like how to scale, whether it's influencers, PR, all that, and just go new product. Start with that if you don't have it. And then from there, and also please balance your books. Like make sure that the margin on the product is all good. Like don't scale into oblivion, but start there and then flow into everything else.
Nailed it. Yeah. So Ray's take on how to scale a fashion brand is if you have a bestseller, keep that in stock at all times. Go a mile deep versus a mile wide and an inch deep. Meaning, take your best-selling product and create new colors, different lengths, different styles, patterns. You can grow a 7-figure business off of literally one product, but many different styles of that same product.
How often have we seen that? Yeah, how often?
But you can run your business to the ground by launching new styles every single week and always running out of stock of your bestsellers. Like the best way to scale in fashion, find something that crushes, go very deep on it. For example, Corey on our team, he has a brand that he's really just transforming. They found one product, it was a type of short, right? But so instead of going different product lines, he's like, no, do different colors now, different patterns of that same product. Now do different lengths of that short. And that is what's scaling their brand by going very deep. And then eventually you can try and test based on these methodology of new product launches and new things. And that's how you get other hero SKUs. But that right there is the sure way to scale.
Yeah. And I have a whole, I remember this was at the start of COVID when everyone was locked down and we couldn't go anywhere. And I went, you know what? I'm going to entertain myself by learning more about product line extensions. So I went and actually read a whole bunch of books and watched a whole bunch of videos about how brands at the higher levels, I guess, or even product consultants talk their brands through product line extensions and when to activate what product line extension, right? Like how does Lululemon start with a certain line and then end up with like shoes and still have it make sense? And then water bottles still have it make sense, right? Why don't we have Toyota skateboards? It's stuff on wheels, right? The Toyota brand, but why not? Why intuitively do we kind of go, that's kind of stupid? But in some other ways, there are ones that work out where they make a big leap. How do they product line extension themselves into these other areas? Did a whole bunch of research there. It never really went anywhere because it was just for me to entertain myself. And I figured we're a performance marketing firm, not a product line, like advisory kind of firm or anything like that. Not yet. But yeah, we're excited to share that or at least dig it up. I don't remember what folder it's in anymore.
That would be a great episode because, some people, they make that extension and it ruins their business or they lose a ton of money. Other people, it becomes the brand maker because they made the right call. Like I find that so fascinating. And what were the pieces that they saw that other people's ignored that everything clicked based on what they already sold? Like that's just a fascinating podcast.
Yeah, for sure. And also the brands that decide to kill a complete product line, piss off a few customers, but in the long run made them like grow because they went, this just is not working for us anymore. We don't want to, it doesn't make us money or it doesn't help the brand equity kind of grow. We're moving into this next thing. And the consideration set also very fascinating for some COVID reading back in the day.
Well, that wraps it, guys. Hope you guys liked this popcorn edition of FAQs. I had a lot of fun on this one, D. I thought it was really fun to bounce around and have some diversity. How'd you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think so too. I'd love to, now that we are 11 episodes in, I think it's time for us to like take stock. The first milestone is still 20. The popular belief is that most pods don't survive past 20 because after that they run out of shit to say or they want to strangle each other at the throat because they figured after 20 episodes, I really don't want to live with you. We moved in together for a while, but you start scratching your ass around me. I don't quite like that. And then that's when they stop. So milestone is 20. But I think to your point, taking stock a little bit and kind of going, hey, what are some ways that we can make this thing more engaging, more fun, more valuable? If you have thoughts, I'd love for you to put it in the comments, please. Let us know. Punch us in the teeth, like Ray likes to say. because we do like punches in the teeth that help us learn how to make stuff better. Yeah, for sure. Do you got
All right, guys.
a closing thing? Want to say bye?
Yeah, so guys, we're making this right before Black Friday. This will come out after Black Friday. Stay tuned. Me and Dee are actually prepping a really great webinar on how to have an amazing Q1 when everyone else is just sucking wind. We have a really good strategy and playbook on that we'll be releasing. So if you're interested, let us know in the comments. Stay tuned.
Totally. And if you're a freak like us, we'll call it Q5 and we'll call it Q1 just to confuse the people that don't belong. But the ones that do will know exactly what's up. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for today, Ray. That was fun.
See you guys.